We're here in Labour HQ with the leader of the Labour Party and would-be Prime Minister, Ed Miliband, who has agreed to answer some of your questions, some of our questions, and some questions from some famous faces. So let's get cracking with a question from Jamelia, singer and mother.
Hi Ed, it's Jamelia here. I wanted to ask you, do you let your children eat junk food?
That is a good question. Well, you know, my younger son has a peanut allergy.
Oh no!
So, now that is quite a good excuse for restricting the junk food. But they do eat sweets, but not massive amounts,
Once a week?
Sweets. I think probably a bit more than once a week.
And do you let your kids play computer games?
Yes.
What are they into?
Are they into? They're quite into sort of CBeebies. The CBeebies have quite a lot of games. They're into the Octonauts. Do you know the Octonauts?
Yeah, no, they're a huge hit. Have they ever played Manic Miner?
They haven't played Manic. Do you think I should teach them to
well,
play Manic?
Look, Ed.
Oh
now,
my
Now,
goodness.
we downloaded it because I'd never seen it before.
Now, hang on, this is not level one.
Right,
First of all, the character does look like Boris Johnson, which is clearly inappropriate at so many levels. And by the way, you also did not get 8 lives on Manic Miner. I think you got 3 lives on Manic Miner.
So is this an easy, reduced, watered down Manic Miner? It's no.
I mean,
well,
it's like
I feel like I've offended you, Ed.
You have offended me. I think you've offended sort of the, you know, kind of original, real Manic Miner followers.
Right.
It's just not good enough.
Note to make is not good enough.
Exactly.
Sorry, let's take it away.
The Guardians let the side down, I'm afraid.
Do you think kids these days play too many computer games, eat too much junk food?
No, haven't kids always done that? I love playing computer games.
Jamelia, who just asked you a question,
Yes.
got herself into a spot of bother recently because she was suggesting, because obviously there's problems with obesity in the UK, she was suggesting that there shouldn't be plus-size clothes available in high street stores, essentially kind of shaming people into losing weight.
There shouldn't be plus-size
Yeah.
clothes.
Not on
What
the
are
high
people
street.
supposed to wear then?
Well, exactly. They're meant to seek out special plus-size clothing stores in order to find adequately sized clothing.
I don't think that's quite the answer, really.
Yeah.
I mean, look, there is definitely a set of issues that you've got to deal with, and we've got policies on, particularly, you know, food aimed at children. You know, things that are particularly aimed at children with very high sugar content, and that is an issue. You know, you've got to make sure that people have the opportunity for exercise and all of that. And I think education, 5 a day, all of that stuff is part of it.
Is that a government responsibility to make sure people are...
I mean, information, I think, is the best. Information and the right regulation, I think, is the answer.
Well, we've got another question now from familiar face, possibly Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart, yeah, he's one of our supporters.
Yeah.
At least I hope he is.
My question is about fairness in society, not equality. Fairness. What does that word mean to you?
Crumbs. Look, I think it means everybody having an opportunity to get on, to do well, but it also means that, and Patrick said not equality, but it also means that the gap shouldn't be too wide. Because I think if the gap is incredibly wide, I think it's bad for our society. You know, I think inequality matters. I think, you know, if the gap between rich and poor, the richest and everybody else is too gaping, then I think it makes your society, I think it makes it worse for everybody, actually.
Yeah. Some of the policies that you've brought forward in this election, obviously getting rid of 0 contract hours, but also raising the minimum wage to £8, isn't it, by 2020. So, like, the living wage, though, already in London is, like, over £9. Why not just make it, isn't it fairer to make it a living wage rather than a minimum wage?
Well, you know, UK citizens, or Citizens UK, who are the, you know, who are the drivers of the living wage, they always say you should have a legal minimum, and then you want to get beyond the legal minimum. So we're not just seeking to make sure that everybody does the minimum, we want to go beyond that. That's the point of the living wage. So I want the minimum wage to be as high as possible, consistent with, you know, keeping employment up, but then you want companies to do a living wage over and above that. And that's why we're going to offer tax breaks for companies that do the living wage. First time we'll have done that. And I want to encourage employers, I want to champion the living wage and encourage as many employers as possible to do that.
You've made this election very much about values. And I think that struck a chord with voters, because if I don't know if you've Googled yourself recently.
I don't
sort
tend
of
to
Ed
do that,
way.
funnily enough.
But if you put, is Ed Miliband A into Google, actually, weirdly, something comes up that is Ed Miliband actually meringues in a suit, which I completely befuddles me. But the second one is Ed Miliband a socialist? Are you a socialist?
Yeah, it says Democratic Socialist on our party card. And, you know, that is about, I mean, it goes to Patrick's question. You know, it's about equality, it's about fairness, it's about the, and each generation, you put those values into practice. And, you know, I say about this election, it's about how we make the country work for working people again. I think it's a big choice at this election. Another 5 years of a government that thinks if you help the richest and most powerful, the wealth trickles down to everybody else. That's not my view of a way a country succeeds.
And that is that what you would say modern idea of socialism is?
Yes. I came into the Labour Party because I believe in equality, and that's around, you know, tackling inequality of income, wealth, power. I think that's the sort of the modern form of democratic socialism.
Because your father obviously was a leading Marxist academic, wrote heaps about this kind of thing. Was he of the opinion that socialism wasn't achievable from Westminster?
By the Labour Party. He wasn't achievable by the Labour Party. Now, I don't know whether he'd think I was proving that or not. I mean, sadly, he's not around to have the argument with me.
May not have voted for you, but...
He would have voted for me. No, he would definitely, excuse me, he definitely would have voted for me.
Good, good. Right.
He always voted Labour.
You know, the IMF and other leading economists like Paul Krugman have questioned austerity. Do you agree that austerity was a mistake?
Well, I certainly think the Tory approach has been wrong.
Right.
Look, it has delayed growth for 3 years. And look, the test I have of a successful economy is rising living standards. That is my economic test. And, you know, that hasn't happened under this government. We've seen 5 years of wages falling behind bills.
Yeah, it's been a battle, hasn't it, to kind of shake off this idea that Labour's responsible for the financial crisis. I mean, how much do you want to throttle Liam Byrne for leaving that note?
Well, the note was a stupid thing to do, but I think most voters are focused on the future. And they're focused on what's going to happen to their life, what's going to happen in the future. Tory
policies of the last 5 years have seen things like a 15-fold increase in food banks, food bank users, sorry. Under a Labour government, can you promise that we won't see an increased need for food banks?
Yeah, we've got to reduce the need for food banks. Look, what are the three causes of food banks? Low wages and low incomes, and that's why you've got to raise people's incomes. Personal debt, and that's why you've got to strengthen the credit unions and clamp down on the payday lenders, and a benefit system that's a disaster. A benefit system that's leading to delays in payments, that's got lax compassion. That's why we're going to get rid of the bedroom tax. You know, we've got a plan which actually will, well, I hope reduce food poverty, one of the richest countries in the world. Next question up from someone who you might recognise from your early career days. It's Clive Ball. Yeah, of LBC. You were one of his panellists, weren't you? A pundit.
You used to be on my radio programme, as I'm sure you remember, when you were a teenager, and you seemed even then to be really interested in politics and what was going on around us. Did you want to be a politician at that age? Did you think one day maybe you would be Prime Minister?
I didn't, certainly not.
What did you want to be as a teenager?
Well, I was quite interested in journalism, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you know, if the internet had been going, I might have wanted to, you know, be doing your job.
Yeah, I could swap.
Yeah, I was on this programme called Young London on LBC with Clive, which was sort of reviewing plays and, you know, films and all of that.
Were you as much of a hit with teenage girls then as you are now?
I think neither now nor then. I think
this Miliband thing has been amazing, hasn't it?
It's been surprising, I think it's fair to say.
Have you seen
My wife thinks it is a case of mistaken identity.
Listen, now that you are running for Prime Minister, the Tories and the kind of right-wing media have really gone for you very personally. Do you think that backfiring has actually worked in your favour with things like Miliband?
I don't know. Look, I think in the end people are pretty sensible, and people recognise that when right-wing newspapers attack me, they've got an agenda. And, you know, I was just thinking actually the other day that, you know, the Sun's endorsement of the Tories, I mean, it's slightly eccentric, but they're also endorsing the SNP in Scotland. I think people thought about that, you know. I remember, you know, previously there'd been a big deal, a big sort of deal, you know, who's the Sun endorsed. And I think it partly reflects the fact that people have got used to the fact that newspapers are just pretty partisan. And they kind of make up their own minds. You have said that you're tough enough. You've said that actually one of the most important lessons you learned from Gordon Brown was toughness. What has been like the toughest moment, do you think, personally or professionally for you? Do you mean while I've been leader? Yeah, or even previously. I mean, in politics in general, the toughest thing I did, to be absolutely frank, was running for the leadership against David. That was, you know, by far the toughest thing I've done. For reasons that are sort of obvious, because he's my brother and because I love him, And you know, I did it because of what I believe, and because I felt I was the best person to move the Labour Party on from New Labour and to change the country.
Yeah.
And so I suppose I thought at the time, you know, this is an incredibly tough thing to do. It's incredibly hard for me, for my family, and you know, obviously the general election is tough too. But I'm pretty resilient.
So one more question from John Ronson, who's a Guardian writer.
I was talking to a man once who didn't have as much political power as he could have had, and I asked him why he didn't seek it, and he said, well, why would I want to rule the world? I enjoy my weekend, do the gardening, and I play Scrabble. And he said that everybody who seeks political power has some kind of psychological itch that needs scratching. So my question is, what psychological itch do you have which needs scratching?
That's an interesting question. I don't plead guilty to his premise. Look, the thing I would say is, for me, is about changing the country. And I never thought I'd be doing this job. I mean, it goes back to Clive's question. It wasn't like I sat down 15 years ago, 20 years ago and thought I want to be an MP or I want to be Prime Minister. But, you know, the opportunity to change the country is what inspires me and is what drives me forward. I think, look, where John has got a point is, I think it's incredibly important, whatever happens to me, you know, whether I win the election or not, is that you mustn't develop the arrogance of power. I think it's incredible. You know, maybe I'll have less time for gardening. Not that I'm a great gardener anyway, but I think it's incredibly important to remain not aloof. You know, I think one of the good things about being leader of the opposition is, you know, you can lead a pretty, I wouldn't say normal life, but you can lead a life, you know, where you're out there talking to people, not in a bubble. You've got to have a certain tenacity to do this job, a certain resilience. But I think it's about, for me, it's about what we can do for the country.
Thank you, Ed. I've just got one.
Yes.
Now we've entered our quickfire zone because we've got very little time with you.
Zone.
Nick Clegg speaks 5 languages. How many languages do you speak?
Sort of one and a bit.
What's the bit?
Well, the bit is French, but it's really my French.
Petit peu?
And it's really bad, actually, because my parents both were French. Well, my mum is a French speaker.
Yeah.
And my dad was a French speaker. And I sort of feel like I'm sort of, yeah, it's bad.
Okay. What's the longest you've been out of work?
Not long. I mean, I suppose when I left university, I was looking for a job for a period, for a few weeks or so. But I've been lucky, in truth. I've been lucky.
Supermarket or farmer's market?
Both.
Do you own a pair of Wellington boots?
That is a good question. I think I probably do, but I wouldn't say they are, you know, used every day.
Okay, good. How many bathrooms do you have?
How many bathrooms do we have? My God, I think given my kitchen's experience, I think there are some things better left unsaid.
Some things that will be left private. Ed Miliband,
thank
you
very
so much
much
for your time.
I was a teenager. I drank far too much, and it was at a party, and the rest is history, including the poor cacti.
Right. Okay, but they're behind you those days.
Well, they are.